This is part 7, in a 7-part series that examines aspects of the fires that destroyed Lahaina, Maui on August 8, 2023. Although this section was originally scheduled to deal with questions surrounding the event, it will also contain, at its conclusion, observations that you may interpret as personal opinions. You may agree or disagree as you see fit. After examining this event from as many different angles as possible, along with continually revising it due to additional information that has been uncovered, many questions come to mind. The first and foremost is why it becomes necessary to suspend a citizen's rights whenever a disaster occurs. The first thing that should be made clear, and without any doubt whatsoever, is that no one has the authority, or can be given the authority, at local, state, or federal level, to suspend the rights of citizens granted and guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States. No one. All bills passed by Congress, and signed into law by the President, are subject to the restraints of the Constitution. All state laws, or local ordinances, or rules, are subservient to the Constitution. My next question is why we are continually expected to be totally reliant on authorities at all levels, to take care of us. Survival in this world is dependent on personal efforts to do so. We don't need to have someone come and save us. We can and should take care of each other, a lesson we must learn and remember based not upon the actions of the authorities of Maui or Lahaina, but by the actions of the Hawaiian people themselves, during this disaster. I came to this examination with a mathematics plus computer science, technology, and military background of some 25 years. The experience acquired in those areas along with general life skills of being a jack of all trades, but master of none, have taught me one important skill. That is attention to details. Because the devil is literally in the details, and therefore, is also the truth. Here is our first question, before we even begin on Lahaina. Between July 22 to August 4, 2023, a massive, and almost worldwide military exercise known as Talisman Sabre had transpired. It included this list of participants along with many other nations. Considering all the technology that this assemblage had access to, is it possible that elements of this group were still active and either intentionally, or accidentally, utilized exotic tech on either a planned or mistaken target? It is, however, interesting to note that air assets that participated in this exercise were utilized in the early days supposedly in search and rescue efforts. Why were there odd linear clouds over the island during the 8th that stopped at the northeast coastline? Why had there been a strange haze over multiple islands in the vicinity? One of the most critical questions is as follows. Why were perfectly geometric circles, in the shape of bullseyes, with different dBz values detected over Lahaina between 11 p.m. on Monday, the 7th until 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th? These were Doppler indicated and are not naturally occurring, that is, they are completely artificial. Why was there a peculiar cloud formation, part of which that provided a wind corridor aimed directly at the heart of Lahaina, that did not change throughout the day on the 8th? Why did certain GOES satellite imagery show what appeared to be a pattern of circular dots in that cloud formation at one point? What were all the white orbs that were seen and recorded in videos during the fires? Why was it necessary to examine the videos at a slower speed to even see them? Indicating that because of their true speed, they would be undetectable. Why did the sun look so odd on the afternoon of the 8th? Why did a video show it actually expanding and contracting, again when the video was slowed down? What caused the strange, extremely bright flashes of light in the sky, at the top of Lahaina Luna Road? What caused the gray pulses captured near the electric poles? What was coming down from the sky, over the area near Front Street at 4:32 p.m. that was captured in a still image? Later in the evening, what force or technology was at play when after what sounded like an explosion, seemed to create a horizontal fire column in the sky, over houses along the Hanoapalani Road across from the small church? Why does the audio, when slowed to half speed, sound as if there is a pattern present? Why do images of the actual fire areas, captured by a ghost satellite, indicate parallel lines when enlarged? These lines only occur over the fires and not anywhere else in the image. As the fires raged on the night of the 8th, what was it that was captured as being in the skies over Lahaina in this image? Its shape is strikingly similar to existing military drone technology. Now we turn to the response by those in positions of protecting the population. Why were authorities so slow to recognize the severity of this event? It is almost as if no one was in charge during a critical time period in the late afternoon on the 8th. It is 6 p.m., a large number of structures have been destroyed, many people have already died. By 5:30 people have jumped into the water along the shoreline in an effort to survive, and the mayor doesn't seem to understand at all the gravity of the situation or extent of the damage. As the fires progressed, and as people that realized the oncoming danger were seeking escape by vehicle, why were police continually turning traffic back into harm's way? Why weren't the sirens, part of possibly the best warning system in the world, utilized to alert the inhabitants to the danger? The fires continue into the early morning hours of the 9th, destroying other areas north and south of central Lahaina. At first light, the utter destruction becomes clear. This is when the true character of those responsible for protecting the population that they lead becomes evident. There will emerge two diametrically opposing stories concerning actual conditions on the ground, one political, the other from the survivors.
I've been back to work the last week or so, and I work on a boat, and we've been doing community sales for other people who lost their homes, and we've had boats full of Kanaka or Native Hawaiians that are first responders, firemen, just people who went in to help their community when there's a lack of government people helping, and all of their stories don't line up with the news, and I believe them 100%. You see the hurt in their faces while they're talking. So the death toll says it's at like 97 or something. It was over 100, and they took it back down, which makes no sense, especially because I've talked to at least 50 people went back the morning after the fire, and they said they saw way more than 97 bodies just on the streets that first day. And they've finished searching through all the houses and stuff and claim that there's 97, and everyone that was there just says there's no way. I have friends that were pulling people out of the water that night and were surrounded by bodies that the Coast Guard was telling them they weren't allowed to grab because they weren't authorized to grab bodies. They had to push them out of the way to save people. I know people who walked through the street the next morning and saw cars with parents and 3 kids in the back, even though there's only been 2 kids listed as dead, and neither of them were below the age of 11, and they were like, these are tiny little bodies. I had first responders made a list of all the bodies that they saw per street on the first morning. The fire moved 80 miles an hour, so all of these people were just running in the street and just couldn't move in time, so they were just out there for everyone to see. And they showed me their list, and per street there are 90 people per street, and they would list them as adults and kids, and in the super tight multi-generational neighborhood the fire started in that was destroyed in like 5 minutes. They had lists of small bodies and adult bodies, and just way more than the 97 that they're claiming died.
The stark reality of the situation that authorities faced on the 9th was that literally hundreds of bodies were all over Lahaina. They were on the streets, in their cars, and floating in the waters offshore. There were also dead animals mixed in with the remains, free roaming, or pets of the individuals close by. What happened next can only be deemed as criminal. Why, in all things holy, were there no efforts, during multiple days after the fires, to retrieve these bodies by authorities? Why was it necessary for the survivors and other residents to step in, and using pickup trucks or flatbed trailers, in order to ensure some dignity to their death by providing a proper burial, instead of allowing them to rot in the streets? According to some sources on the ground, the condition of the bodies was described as having napalm-like burns, some having been split open by some manner. There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever for this behavior of elected officials. Beginning during the night of the 8th, while fires were still advancing, electric trucks were out repairing lines while people were dying. The next morning, when human remains were lying in the streets, heavy equipment was being utilized to clear debris, without any evidence of recovery. Water, that was such a scarce and precious commodity yesterday, was being used to wash the roads. Why was one of the first official acts securing the entire area from access by anyone not authorized, except authorities, or individuals or business entities they authorized? Why was there so much emphasis on keeping people out of the area, clearing the debris with or without human and animal remains, and washing the area, instead of looking for survivors? Against a backdrop of survivors whom had lost everything and needed food, clothing, and shelter, authorities were willing to spend an inordinate amount of money to ensure that the area was off limits. Why the extreme need to hide what was going on inside the area? In the days that followed, additional assets were put in place. Why was $3 million used to construct a fence and black covering surrounding the entire fire-damaged area? Why were actual boulders placed along open areas, to thwart any entry off-road, or stop along the bypass to look down upon the area? Why were additional non-Maui police, law enforcement types stationed at close intervals along the bypass, to discourage and/or arrest individuals who might stop to take pictures? Why were drone flights over the area prohibited? The location is Front Street, near the rock piles that were supposed to have had human remains washed up on them. It is the 10th of August. What is being loaded on this open trailer? Maybe the question should be, what is being dumped? This area may be the only one that has a street perpendicular to the sea wall and can handle a larger piece of equipment such as this truck and trailer combination. Drone video on the 10th captured this next effect of the fires. This crop of a building near the cell phone towers near the Mind's Eye, and housing the Napa and UPS store, shows a curious result. Anyone who has ever played around with using a welder should recognize the pattern. Why does the upper right corner of the building look as if it were arc welded? Perhaps the following is quite innocent, but considering what has transpired so far, it is probably not likely. There did not seem to be any effort to remove bodies from the streets, but there was substantial effort to shield everything from view and clean up the area. Both drone video and still images showed some points of interest for those cleanup crews. While the rest of the entire area remained static, there was activity on at least 2 different occasions along Papalua Street. Why such attention at this particular site? A little research shows that on the night of the 8th, this particular building along with the others along this street were mostly destroyed by the fires. It is interesting to note that there are at least 3 possibly potentially lucrative structures along this street. The one building which seems to be the focus of most of the attention was the American Savings Bank. So the larger question is, what were all these people collecting? There is no apparent fire, but firemen are present. There appear to be numerous individuals in dark clothing, implying law enforcement types, but few to no civilians to round up. So, just exactly what were they doing there? This brings up a complaint that resident survivors had against authorities. Many individuals that lived in the affected, now quarantined areas, had safes that stored their personal papers, and presumably precious metals. It is possible some of these storage devices, like the bank vaults, would have survived, with their contents intact. With the area's access points sealed off and protected from entry, the zone became a paradise for looters. The remains of jewelry stores, in particular, like one seen along Front Street, could have yielded diamonds, which, being the hardest substance known to mankind, would have survived the fire, and would be present in the dust. So now the question remains. Was there looting that took place inside the fire zone, while everyone else was not able to enter? What actually happened to the contents of the vault in the American Savings Bank and all the safety deposit boxes that were also stored in the building? What happened to all the personal safes that residents of Lahaina had and complained about not being able to retrieve them? Were they gone when they returned to their burned-out homes, or did they simply not return for their possessions because they died in the fires? It is hoped that the next few images indicate a distribution point for assistance to the victims of the disaster. Indeed, even before any government assistance was initiated, local residents set up small areas to provide emergency food, water, and clothing to survivors. If that were not the function, then there seems to be an inordinate amount of loose items within this small area. So, what was transpiring here, a short walking distance from the police station? How many men, women, and children actually died during this tragedy? Out of a population of some 12,750 individuals, only 100 people were identified as having died, and according to authorities, no children under 10 died at all. That announcement alone indicates absolute incompetence, or in polite terms, intentional inaccuracy. My apologies for the next few images, but they must be viewed to understand the truth of this event. Along Front Street alone, within 2 different cars were 3 child restraint car seats, 2 in one vehicle, and 1 in the other, that had the charred remains of young children. So whom do we believe, the survivors that keep telling us of the elevated numbers of deaths, or the authorities, that are continually being shown to be less than forthcoming with the truth? Why did some buildings display damage that indicated some extreme force had hit them? For instance, why is there a circular hole in this one? Why would an elevated concrete reinforced parking area, with the capability to support not only itself, but also the weight of some 25 cars, get completely smashed, while the rest of the adjoining building's walls collapse outward? Why were the tops of electric poles sheared off? Considering the wind that day, and how it caused the poles to lean and thus topple, it is understandable that they might fail at ground level. A lack of attention to individual pole condition, or choice of cheaper substandard wood could also be a partial culprit. But to observe a similar condition, in many individual areas seems a bit odd. It appears that in many areas, electric poles were damaged at a particular point, just between a transformer and the actual wires carried by the pole. Indeed, why was there so much trouble with the electrical grid, even after it went completely down, early in the morning of the 8th? If the electric had been shut off early Tuesday morning, and the electric company had not repaired all lines, and re-energized the grid, how can we explain the following? A man is running down the dock at the harbor, warning anyone still there to leave, and explains that an electric box is on fire.
Fire's got Front Street! It's already gone! Hey, do you live on this? Well, on the other side of the big tree. Front Street, ABC store, all gone. It's straight north of us. That's the electrical box that's on fire. If you keep going past that, you'll hit the pine trees on the beach. The safe way is the beach. Just stick to the water. Thank you. And if you can, take the breakwater. Actually, don't. You'll lose your footing. If anybody's still out here, it's time to go.
Given a situation where there is no power in the lines since about 6 a.m., how is it possible for an electric pole, essentially out in the middle of nowhere, to appear to catch fire? There is no raging fire anywhere near this area, yet we observe a line of light along the right side of this pole, with a hint of blue in its coloring. It is not uncommon to have either electric wires, ground wires, or even steel stabilization cables, which anchor the poles, better be placed along the sides of electric poles. There are also cases where burned wood products like poles or fence posts had metal bolts or cables associated with why they were damaged. Was this another case of that phenomenon? What caused this Matson trailer, that was parked in the parking lot of the Foodland store, catch fire internally, and create all the carbon you see here on the inside and on the doors? Nothing around the trailer is damaged, not one blade of grass, not any leaves or branches on the trees, nor any other vehicle close by. But the tires are completely destroyed, as is the case on other vehicles. Almost every similar type container, with or without wheels, suffered the same fate. On the 9th, as Herzog evacuated from Lahaina, he recorded a container still smoking from the night before. What natural weather-related event is able to accomplish that effect? What actually happened at the Emerald Plaza area, as originally questioned by Eric West, in his videos on the aftermath of the fires. It is clear from multiple images that a sequence can be constructed which shows some fire-related agent was present in the underground storm drain system. One aerial image actually shows the grates emitting black smoke. This condition was verified on the ground by Eric in his video examining the area. The underground fire caused extreme damage to certain areas of the building opposite one of the grates. Did the below-ground pipe system actually get so hot in the process that it not only created black carbon in the grates, damaged the building itself, but also actually melted the asphalt at ground level? Is that why we see in this last image that the damaged asphalt has all been replaced, but the damage to the side of the building remains? Located up Kioway Street Extended, which accesses the bypass, is a piece of real estate that was utilized for re-establishing telephone and internet communication. Although images on the 8th and 9th are supposedly absent from the Google Earth archive, the ones for the 10th through the 12th seem to be available. They show a sequence of communication assets being increased over time. One resource stood out from all the rest. Even though there were multiple assets parked in the same area, this resource was the only one which required a chain-link fence surrounding it. Why all the security for this one vehicle and none for the rest? Was this something to be hidden and secured in plain sight? It is strikingly similar to something we have seen before. Configurations such as this, that have square or round reflectors and focal point objects, can be either a receiver of or transmitter of specific frequencies. It may also be both. So hypothetically, two of these trucks, each placed at individual locations above Lahaina, could theoretically produce a scalar effect. While we are on the subject of scalar waves and their effects on our reality, there is a curious observation made by firemen at the start of the fires around 3:30 p.m. But first, let us review some of the effects of scalar technology. Whether theoretical or actual, this technology can create all kinds of electromagnetic patterns. Similar to HARP, with its toolbox of basically two-dimensional patterns, scalar tech has access to three-dimensional patterns. Various-sized, glowing spheres or hemispheres can be created and aimed at a particular target. The target can receive a range of effects, from simple disruption all the way to total destruction. A radio communication, on the day of the fires, was logged in and contained the following message. The unit was parked on Kiaialua Street. Fireball behind house, got out of area. It just so happens that behind the house sat two cars that were destroyed in the fires, with nothing else surrounding them burned. The sight was brought to our attention by Eric West in one of his videos. So the question is, were these firemen observing evidence of scalar technology at play? Captured by about 11:30 p.m. on the 8th, this image is a snapshot of the fires around the homeless assistance area and Hokiokio Place. It shows a combination of hot spots and actual fires, which are yellow and white areas. Why is there evidence of arson at certain locations of fires in the area? The location of such evidence is at Hokiokio Place. This video image crop shows a water stream being sprayed from an above cab nozzle on a fire engine. The apparatus is on the road next to the area and is trying to extinguish fires still smoldering. Evidently not noticed at the time is the red gas can that is circled in the image. There seem to be other small areas along the bypass that have caught fire for no apparent reason. Nothing else is on fire around these sites, yet one is engulfed and the other seems to be heating up. Another question is what was actually burning in this area. Within the same video just referenced, firefighting personnel can be seen using equipment to tamp down smoldering piles of what appears to be mulch. And, like the area up Lahaina Luna Road and the bypass, within a short period of time, all was cleaned up. We know that at least one gas line ruptured and acted like a blowtorch across from Emerald Plaza. We also know that many metal items melted because of the fire's tremendous heat. The question is, therefore, how many other gas line structures, such as these, were damaged and contributed to the developing inferno? Why did it take so long for anyone to come to the aid of these survivors? When authorities did finally come, there were stories of actually turning away assistance from volunteers that had traveled from other countries, individuals that had participated in disasters elsewhere in the past, and even locals from other islands that brought needed supplies in their own boats. Was it simply due to governmental red tape? On August 10, President Biden declares the area as a disaster, thus releasing federal assets. Even though there are already some military resources operational via Coast Guard and Navy, along with Hawaii National Guard, FEMA does not arrive until the 11th. So, where are all the survivors, and how are they getting food, water, clothing, and let alone, some sort of shelter? That assistance came from the community and should be a lesson for us all. We must learn again that not only must we take care of ourselves, but also, we must take care of each other. One of the casualties of this event was this cat. It appears from its position that it died instantly, in an upright posture. The image is a crop of a video, captured by a Maui policeman while on duty during the fires. The question concerning this observation is: was whatever caused this condition responsible for why so many individuals' remains were found inside of vehicles? They were killed instantly. In a sea of gray, throughout all of Lahaina, how is it that objects that were brightly colored, with the majority being blue, either survived the fires, or seemed to interrupt some process that was transpiring? We see the infamous blue umbrellas by Front Street, blue cars at various sites, a pristine-looking small container, a t-shirt retrieved from below the rubble of a once active store, just to name a few. If something other than natural forces were operational that day, then this is a valid clue to consider in identifying that artificial process. On December 10, the Hawaii Department of Health issued a statement indicating that samples had been collected on 7 to 8 November 23 from 100 properties in Lahaina, and based upon the lab results pronounced a warning, citing high levels of arsenic, lead, antimony, cobalt, and copper in the ash. What they did not indicate was that other, highly flammable substances were also detected, at much greater concentrations than any of the identified toxins that were reported. Aluminum, for instance, was found at levels ranging from 37 to 44 times the concentration of arsenic. Although aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, it is never found free in nature. All of the Earth's aluminum has combined with other elements to form compounds, such as aluminum oxide. There seems to be a disconnect between what the lab report says and what is being stated to the public. Aside from the fact that there was a slight problem with the chain of custody with shipping the samples, only 3 samples were tested, according to that report. Not the 100 samples publicized. Additionally, no warning was stated as to the presence of the flammable materials, their absolute toxicity to humans, or their levels in comparison to the other toxins. Was this because of how aluminum burns rather aggressively? As it burns, it creates aluminum oxide, which itself, if also burned, creates a bluish color. Is this another clue? The area may be even more toxic than suspected. Even the level of toxicity that precluded any of the residents returning to what was left of their homes should have influenced this gathering. It was not wise to allow press and authorities to walk around unmasked. It seems to follow a pattern, though, that government officials accomplish in taking advantage of photo opportunities. This time it may be to the detriment to their own health. It is difficult to come to terms regarding some of the behaviors of this fire and its effect on the local environment. One CNN reporter, embedded with a fire-fighting crew, observed first-hand roots of trees on fire below ground. Temperatures taken of the soil at this location exceeded 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Indeed, not only below-ground roots were affected, there was also damage to storm drains, most notably at Emerald Plaza, fire hydrant lines, surface water pumps, and so on. Water testing is ongoing, and the focal points of those tests indicate a suspicion of major damage underground. The entire area's underground infrastructure is being tested for chlorine residual, coliform bacteria, volatile organic compounds VOCs, and semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs. The search for coliform bacteria implies the failure of sewage or storm drain lines, allowing such to leach into potentially broken fire hydrant lines. A random sampling of a few test sites also indicates the presence of siamazine. Cyamazine is a herbicide of the triazine class. The compound is used to control broadleaved weeds and annual grasses. There is a troublesome statement made concerning how a finding of a particular type of contamination is actually reported. Reporting value, all SVOCs not detected at or above the reporting limit. Which seems to mean, someone has decided that a certain amount of the substance is okay for human consumption. An assumption that sounds a bit ludicrous. The ingestion of any type of chemical such as this one cannot be beneficial for one's health in the long run. Along similar lines, and concerning the pollution of groundwater, the following question needs to be answered by authorities. The location is the multilevel hotel at the top of Emerald Plaza. Considering all the concern over toxic substances in the debris, with all the requirements of application of soil tech, with all the protective encapsulation of debris before movement, was the burying of material on site a proper way of disposal? Was it even legal, as per EPA regulations? These images show that not only general metallic debris is being buried in back of the original site, but also specific vehicles. Why is this being accomplished, when everything was supposed to go to a temporary site elsewhere? There are so many questions, however, this portion must eventually conclude, so it is with this last question. The location is the Lahaina Shores Beach Resort on Front Street, which suffered minimum to no damage, while almost everything else around was destroyed. The roof of this structure is quite interesting. It has a massive bank of solar panels and associated components to power something, but what? Are they providing electricity to the structure itself or to the myriad communications antenna on top? Which sets up the next question. What are all the communications antenna doing here in the first place? The configuration seems to indicate it being a hub, collecting or receiving communications from all over the area. The two sites are actually serviced by two different carriers. If you had residents around the Mind's Eye, eastward and upslope, it was Thai. Along Front Street and Shaw, where the Lahaina Shores Beach Resort is located, it is Verizon. We will end this part with the following, and additional strange effect of the fires. Found on one of the cars that was totally destroyed, like so many all over Lahaina, this almost insignificant piece of matter survived the intense temperatures required for this vehicle's eventual destruction. A very thin, bumper-attached decal. This concludes Part 7, some of many questions that can be asked as to various information that has come to light over a span of months since the event transpired. There are many more to consider. We may return to this effort at a later date, with an update. At the very least, based upon what has been seen so far, the viewer should be able to make a decision as to what actually happened during those 3 days that turned this absolute paradise into a living hell for its inhabitants.